Hello and welcome to another edition of the Forza Napoli podcast. I am your host, Joe Fischetti. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. On today's episode, we are going to quickly review the Ritiro at Castel di Sangro, which has concluded now. We are also going to talk about the unfortunate injury to Romelu Lukaku and what that means for Napoli and potential replacements or short-term replacements for Lukaku. And then we'll close the pod with a bit of a preview of the upcoming season, which kicks off on Saturday. And I am joined by a guest to help me out with all of that. He is the president of the Tri-State Napoli Club, Gaetano. Welcome back.
Joe, thanks so much for having me as always. Looking forward to it, man. It should be good.
Yeah, me too. And the pleasure is always mine. So let's start with Castel di Sangro. We played 4 friendlies there, if I'm not mistaken. It started out with a loss to Brest, which, wasn't great. I never really care about the results as much as kind of like the things that we're seeing in these matches, because obviously, that's the time of the year for Conte to experiment and try different formations, different combinations of players. They're training like crazy intense training sessions. So I never really take the results too seriously, but we lost to Brest. And then we followed that up with a 3-2 victory over Girona. And then a 4-0 win over Sorrento, which was I think immediately the next day. And Conte actually said that that was intentional to kind of start to prepare these players for, I guess, playing twice a week, which will be a new thing for us this season. And then we won 2-1 against Olympiacos, but that was the match that Lukaku got hurt in. Before we get to the Lukaku injury, was there anything that you saw from Castel di Sangro in general? We're not going to go into any great detail on any of these matches, but just generally speaking, that caught your eye?
I think just overall how Conte was, manipulating the different formations, game to game, and even within the game, after he subbed players in or out, depending on their characteristics, changing formations, moving pieces. What I kind of noticed a lot, even during the trainings with, sometimes Calcio Napoli 24 would show the live trainings. I felt like he was really more focused on filling space and instead of really focusing on positions, finding that space and filling it. You see a lot of the time Di Lorenzo cutting inside even without the ball and filling that space and letting Politano or whoever's playing on that wing kind of take over his area and so on and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. But besides that, like you said, the friendlies, you can't really take too much from the scores. You just want the guys to get minutes in their legs and avoid injuries. And unfortunately, we were okay for the most part. And unfortunately, in the last game, one of our biggest pieces went down for, what looks like a significant amount of time. So overall, I thought both Ritiri were positive, but obviously to end like that is sour note.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you make of some of these formations? Actually, Vincenzo, we had Vincenzo and Gianluca on a couple weeks ago, and we kind of made our predicted starting 11s, which was an early stab at it with a couple weeks ago before the start of the season. And Vincenzo came pretty close with some of his, because he was, and both Vincenzo and Gianluca, who obviously as well, were trying to find ways to fit all 4 midfielders into the starting 11. So Lobotka, Ngisa, McTominay, and De Bruyne. And we actually saw Conte trying to do the same thing against Olympiacos.
Yeah.
Is that something, do you think he'll go with one of these kind of like 4-4-2s, 4-1-4-1, 4-1-1 type of formations?
I think the most interesting one, Joe, is the 4-1-4-1, because it allows Lobotka to do what he does, to sit in front of the defense and kind of dictate from there when we need to build out of the back a little bit. And then also, like you mentioned, is to be able to play those 4 guys together on the field. I think he's going to really focus on flooding the midfield a lot and playing a lot more through the middle than we did last year. I think last year we were much more focused on playing on the wings, getting crosses. And I think with bringing the players like De Bruyne and keeping Anguissa, which I think has not been talked about enough this summer, being able to keep him has been a huge, I think, addition by not subtracting. If that makes any sense.
I get it.
I think he's really going to try to build up play through the middle. So if I had to guess, I don't know exactly what the formation would be, 4-4-2, 4-1-4-1, whatever you want to call it. I think he's going to try to play midfield heavy, just because there's a lot of talent there. I don't know how you keep those guys off the field. to start the game. And again, who knows? Different teams might dictate us playing different ways because of their setups. And he's good game in, game out anyway, making changes. He was last year with limited options. So now this year that we have a lot more talent on the roster and all the players we brought in, I think he'll do a great job, mixing and matching as needed. But I think at the core, he's going to play a lot with the four midfielders.
Yeah, maybe at the beginning of the season he'll do it more. I'm a little on the fence actually, because in his press conference at Castel di Sangro, he talked about how we have a core group of players that are already trained in playing the 4-3-3, but at the same time we're playing with different formations if we want to remove a winger and add a midfielder. So I think it's very clear that Conte is trying to figure this out as well. I think I'm inclined to think I keep debating this. Like I agree with everyone that says, like, how do you keep any of those guys off the field? Like, what are you going to bench De Bruyne or McTominay, right? But at the same time, I think it'll be easier to kind of bench, so to speak, one of those guys when you're playing twice a week and you don't want to kill these guys and get injuries.
Yeah.
I also think now that Lukaku is out, I think that tends to favor more of a traditional 4-3-3 formation, in which case we might see something like you might have to leave one of those midfielders out, and I'm inclined to think the debate is between, like, if you have to pick one guy to leave off the field, it's either Anguissa or De Bruyne, as crazy as that sounds, but it really just depends on what type of match you want to play. Do you want a bigger, more physical ball winner type, in which case you use Anguissa, and you could probably make a similar argument between Anguissa and McTominay, or do you need more creativity, more goals? You lean towards De Bruyne more.
Yeah.
But I think that because I think the plan was for, actually Conte said this as well at Castel di Sangro, was that Luka would be the understudy to Lukaku, because he's working on it, but he's obviously not going to have the hold up game that Lukaku has.
Yeah, he was very clear on that.
Right. And now if you're forced to throw him into the starting 11, then he's probably better suited to receiving crosses from the wings, in which case maybe you want the front three where you have, say, Neres on the left until Lang is ready, Politano on the right, and they could just whip crosses into Luka, who we've seen even in these friendlies is very good at finishing those chances, right? I think it was 4 goals in 7 friendly appearances or whatever it was. So I think that can influence things as well. We've alluded to it a couple of times already, so we might as well talk about the elephant in the room, and that is not a not a fat joke. I mean, Lukaku's in probably the best shape of his life, but he's been teased in the past. But how do you think? Like, obviously, this is a massive loss to us. It's a guy that had double-digit goals and assists last season, and was super important, not just in goal contributions, but just in the general build-up and creating chances. He's become a bit more of a playmaker, and as he's gotten older. Now, not only do we have to go with a more raw player in Luka, we also have less depth. How does this impact Napoli for the start of the season?
Well, I mean, obviously, all the things you said are, they go with, they're clear as day, right? He scored goals, he contributed, but before he joined last year, you heard Conte or people around the team say, like, he's pivotal for Conte's game. He's pivotal for Conte's game. He needs him. I've never in my life, playing or watching the sport since I could ever remember a coach speaking so highly of a player and how important he is to what he wants to accomplish on the field, whatever that might be on any particular day. So that's what worries me the most. I think Luka, at the end of the day, or wherever we bring in, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here shortly, is going to be able to contribute as far as goals or assists. I worry that so much of Conte's philosophy of how he wants to play is focused on Lukaku being on the field and doing the things that he does. And he doesn't have to, I feel like it's one thing that Conte doesn't have to worry about. He can focus on other things. That being gone, that little crutch, I guess, if you want to call it that, is what concerns me. But, we'll see. I think Luka, the goal of the team is probably for him to, like you said, I mean, he said and Conte said that they want him to be the understudy for a year, and then who knows what happens next year with Lukaku or not. But we're gonna have to see if he's ready now.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, again, going back to the lineup and I just can't wrap my head around it. It's Conte's going to have to just figure out how to balance all these different aspects, because I think Luka being in might be an argument for including De Bruyne more because of his playmaking and the goals. You know, if for whatever reason Luka buckles under the pressure or whatever it might be and is not scoring like we hope he does, you have a guy like De Bruyne that can contribute, and McTominay, whereas Anguissa may be lesser so. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Conte deals with that. It sounds like the injury, unfortunately, it's pretty serious. We don't know yet if Lukaku is going to have surgery. He's supposed to have some sort of consultation. There's a therapist, a Dutch therapist that he uses, that Mertens also used, so he's familiar with the club, and he'll be working in kind of hand in hand with Canonico, who's the club doctor. And they'll collectively kind of come to a decision. I'm almost hoping he elects for the surgery, because then you have a pretty definitive sort of time frame for return, which would be like in the 3 to 4 month range. They're saying like January maybe. My biggest worry would be that they try to fix it's a right thigh injury, or left, I think.
Left, yeah,
his
left.
Right down. Yeah, because it was like when he took the shot and just kind of collapse, which was like, I was very scared at first, because you know, some we've seen some crazy things happen on the pitch lately, but thankfully it was only a muscle injury. My biggest fear is that they try to just rehab it, and then he suffers some sort of setback a couple months in and needs to have the surgery anyways, and then ends up missing like the entire season. But in any event, it's serious enough that he's going to, in either case, he's going to miss a lot of time, which means Napoli are going to have to find at least a temporary replacement and leave it to this is like, you know, candy to a child with the media with this type of injury, because there are just any striker that you can possibly think of is now suddenly linked to the club. I counted something like 15 different players in the last couple of days. Are there any options that kind of stand out to you, or maybe see a bit more realistic than
I think if we stick to the realistic side of things, I think a player like Orland would be somebody I would prefer. Young, hungry. Obviously, it didn't go as he would have liked at Man United, as it has with a lot of different players that have gone there. So you would hope coming back to Serie A, working with Conte, would kind of rejuvenate a career that looked like it was going to really take off. I mean, he showed that what he could do when he was playing in Italy before he went to England. There's talks of Vlahovic. I don't know, with a player like that, it's a lot of the issues I think are mental right now. So it's a big time kind of project. I don't know if you want to bring somebody like that in. Dovbyk from Roma, I wouldn't mind at all. He has goals on him, and he's kind of same kind of stature, bigger player, can hold up play pretty well. But like you said, there's names like even Vardy's out there. Like, I mean, that guy's 38. Do you want to bring somebody like that in? I think it just depends on what kind of profile Conte and Manna decide to kind of dive into. They can go the young route and find somebody like I said, to bring in on loan, or they can go with a more experienced player that kind of gives Conte some guarantees. But then again, you run older players, you run the risk of injury a little bit more than you would with the younger guys. So then you're back to square one. And as we were talking before we started, the team has, the club has to worry about the over-under lists of being able to fit the player into the roster. So there's a lot that goes into this decision. I guess the only positive, you want to call it that, is that this injury happened while the mercato is still open. Because, if this happens, middle of September, then what do you do? You're stuck with Luka, and then, I don't know, that's it. If they don't keep on Mazzino, right? So that's really what I'm hanging on to as a fan, is that, okay, this sucks, but at least there's a way and a chance for us to kind of repair it short term. And who knows, if they get it right. Let's say Ireland, I was reading, a 5 million loan with a 40 million option. The guy comes in and scores 10, 15 goals. A player like that at 22, 23, 40 million, you're getting a bargain. So that's, I mean, something to think about for the future as well. So again, it depends on what kind of profile they want to go to.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are a few considerations, and I think you can whittle down the list quite reasonably. I think, another thing Conte talked about at that press conference was the Napoli style and budget kind of restrictions.
Yeah. Can I just say something about that? I was impressed by him because he's historically not been this guy.
I completely agree.
He was very clear that he's like married to the project and he respects the club's like parameters. And he actually, I think he used the word orgulloso.
Proud. He's proud. Yeah.
Of like how the team does business and like, this is what we do. And if it's over, if it's something that doesn't fit in our schemes or our parameters, we're just gonna move on. And he mentioned, the one player really had on his list was Ndoye, and he's like, look, turned out that he was outside of what we wanted to spend, and we moved on. So like,
I completely agree. Like I was super impressed. Somehow De Laurentiis has gotten Conte to feel like this is. I mean, even ADL said it, and we all kind of, whenever he talks, you always think whatever. You don't know crazy old man, whatever. But
he's always right in the end, Joe. He's always right.
It's true. It's hard to deny it. But he said something like there's sort of the three key figures, and no one is more important than the other. So that's Conte, ADL, and Manna. And it does, based on that press conference with Conte, I really got that impression that this is a collective. And I mean, for Conte to have he's always been super detailed oriented, but he also seemed to fully comprehend the business strategy, and that makes me feel like he's very much on board, like he said, and he's proud of it. And so one of the criteria is price, and I think that already will rule out certain players. Like I know a lot of people are really hoping we get Lookman. We'll talk about the various clubs' mercatos a bit later, but it does not seem like he's going to end up going to Inter, which is really interesting. But Percassi was pretty clear that if he's going to sell Lookman to a direct rival, his expectation is going to be like 50, 55, maybe even 60 million. So I just don't see, even though we have cash on hand from not just the Osimhen sale, but also the Cavada sale, which we never really spent, I don't see us spending that much money when we still have other gaps to fill as well. Then there's guys like Roberto Piccoli, Krstovic, where whether it's Cagliari or Lecce, it seems like they don't want to loan these guys, they want to sell them outright. And so again, I don't see us, especially on guys like them that are okay, they're playing well with their current clubs, but who knows if they'll be good enough at a top club. So to risk 30, 35 million for these guys, I'm not really buying it. You mentioned loan, that seems to be something the club wants, a loan with an option to buy, which makes sense because if Lukaku fully recovers, then all of a sudden you're oversupplied at the position.
Right.
And so when you start to go through that process, I think, Højlund seems like a realistic option. He's also a guy that we were linked to previously. So that suggests that Conte has kind of already approved of him. There were different reports on Mbolo. I saw one report that said that he was a guy that Mana liked because kind of fit the financial requirements, but Conte wasn't convinced, I guess, that he could play that role. I think he's an interesting option. Pinamonti's been mentioned. If we can get him on a short term, just a loan deal, maybe. I don't know if he's quite the caliber of player to sign permanently. You also always have to kind of consider like the Conte effect and how he's able to get more out of players.
He's also always played on smaller clubs trying to like stay up and
exactly Empoli and Sassuolo and then there's a couple randoms that were thrown out there like Nico Jackson and Mateta, and I don't know. I just don't know enough about these guys, but it'll definitely be interesting to see who they go with. It is. I agree with you. The silver lining is that at least it happened before the transfer window closed. The thing that sucks is it happened like 3 or 4 days after we sold 2 number nines or Raspadori and Simeone leave, and then we lose Lukaku.
Yeah, a lot of people, obviously we're in different group chats and we talk a lot of different people about everything Napoli and when this injury came up, everybody was like, oh, we should have kept Simeone and Raspadori. But my counter argument to that is, okay, sure, you would have had two bodies that would have been able to fill the position, but are they really helping the team? Like, if you compare, like, if we're gonna play that game, let's just say we are able to bring, not just say, we're gonna be able to bring somebody in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have, and I love Simeone, but in my opinion, he's like a finished player. Like, he's just not what we needed.
And he just wasn't suited to Conte.
Right.
Like, I think he could do okay at Torino.
Yeah, I mean, those 4 goals, but for what we need is not that, like, to somebody come in at the end of the game, he just did not produce at all last year, right?
Yeah.
And Raspadori, jack of all trades, no pun intended, but he's not a striker. So whoever we bring in is going to be a true striker, and I think we'll do better than either of those guys. I know a lot of the people in our fan base love those, Raspadori and Simeone, so do I. But as far as, look, if we're going to look forward and what the team needs, they're not. Like, if somebody, if Atletico comes back to us and says, you can have him back, I really wouldn't take him back. I'm trying to be like, it's crazy to say, but
yeah,
he can't play strike. He can't.
And who knows? They might actually do that because a lot of fans were on his case after. I don't know if anyone saw, but Atleti opened their season on the weekend.
Yeah, they lost, right? 2-1.
Yeah, they were up 1-0 before Raspadori came on, and then he lost his man on the equalizer. I don't think he really had much fault on the winner, but Atleti fans were too thrilled about it. But I agree with you. It's not that. Like, yeah, of course we love those guys and everything they did for us during the 2 Scudetti seasons, but we're thinking about now and the future, and they really aren't. Let's be honest. Jack was never a good fit at Napoli.
The first Scudetto season, he scored a lot of big goals. He did last year too, but whenever he started for a long stretch of time because of injuries, he never really produced what we all thought he could or would have been able to when we first signed him.
Yeah, and a player of that quality and for the price we paid for him,
I know,
should be in the starting 11,
sure.
and that's what I mean, that he never really fit the system because he's probably best used as a second striker.
But yeah, seconda punta, and like in a system like this, you just brought Der Bruna in. Were you not going to play him? Behind the striker?
Right, exactly. Another thing you said offline was that I really wish we got Bonni when we were linked to him.
Oh my God, that would have been.
He would have been the perfect Lukaku replacement.
But one thing I'll say about Lukaku too, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I don't know if it's far-fetched to say maybe if, let's say, God forbid, he doesn't come back from his injury, right? Like, he has a surgery, just doesn't recover, is older. He might have played his last game for Napoli because, he's older, right? Even before the injury, I was under the impression myself that this could have been it anyway, because if Luka progresses the way we're hoping he does, he's, going to take over. And you're going to pay a guy $10 million to sit on the bench, and is Lukaku even going to take that role? He's always also mentioned that he wants to go back home and finish his career where he started.
That's right.
So I hope he comes back, this Christmas time, a little before, whatever. But if he doesn't, I wouldn't be shocked if he has played, the last game for Napoli. I know it's far fetched. It's something I've been thinking about.
I don't even think it's that far fetched. You think of sometimes players just, even if he recovers, maybe he's just at an age where he's more susceptible to injury, or your body does funny things when you're not
Trust
playing
me,
for so long. But look at like Milik, for example.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't even old. And he's just, since that initial, what was it, knee injury with Napoli, he just never returned. He went to Juve, he played here and there, but kept getting injured, still injured now. Who knows? He's kind of doing the same thing that he did at the end of his Napoli career, which was like training by himself.
Sure.
He's doing that at Torino, or in Torino. At Juve. But so let's, we talked about Bonni. So let's talk a little bit about the mercato, and I'll pull up some graphics and we can use this to kind of, give our sort of prognostications about how the season's going to go. We don't know, big word, I know. Since I upgraded to YouTube, I had to upgrade my vocabulary.
A little Nostradamus action.
Right. Well, I think part of it is because, or at least what made me want to chat about it, was this crazy Opta analyst
I know. We're
report
talking
that
about
was going
refocus.
around on social media that had Inter at like 35% favorites and Napoli were second here. I have it on my other screen here, so I'll just kind of read it out. Because when you go through it, you realize this must be some kind of weird AI thing that who knows what it's taking into account. It certainly doesn't align with the sports books, which is, if you want real odds, just go to the sports books. But they had Inter, and I'm rounding here a little bit, at 36%, Napoli 14%, Atalanta with a new coach at 13%, Roma with a new coach at 10%, Juve at only 8%, Milan 7%, and Milan's a very interesting club that we're going to talk about with all the moves they've made. Lazio at 5%, having done nothing but change their coach or go back to Sarri. Yeah. And what's also interesting about this Opta predictor, it's called, is that they have Inter winning the Scudetto with 76 points. So, and like everyone is within. Then we have 69, Atalanta 68, Roma 67. So I'm not too convinced by that. I don't know what they've put into the machine. Everybody's using AI these days. But let's start with Napoli's mercato, and I couldn't even fit it all on here because we've made so many moves. I mean, in addition, if we start with like the departures, obviously we've cashed in. One thing that really stands out is that even with all of these purchases that we've made, we're still in the green, and that number and that net spend of 19 and change does not include the Cavada sale. So if you add Cavada to that, it's like 80, 85, or actually no, 95. But it also, like, if some of these numbers look odd to you, it's because these are from Transfermarkt, and this is only showing the 2025 budget numbers. So like if you look at Vanja Milinkovic-Savic, for example, it's a 21 million euro deal, but it's structured such that we pay 15 million euros this season and then the other 6 next season. I think Luka is like 35 in total, but it's like a 9 million euro loan plus obligation to buy. So these numbers might look a little bit funny in that sense, but it kind of balances out because guys like Rafa Marin, Simeone, and Gonga, they all have options or maybe even obligations to buy that will cash in the future. We also loaned out some other guys that were not important to the team. Lindstrom, who returned and was loaned out to Wolfsburg, Caiusta loaned out to Ipswich, Foloruncho loaned out to Cagliari, Zerbin to Cremonese, and Zanoli is expected to join Bologna any day, especially now with Gutierrez and Wanlu. Again, like we talked about the striker position. There's still a couple other gaps with on the wing, whether we still bring in another winger or not. That's kind of up for debate. And then there have been talks about another midfielder as a kind of Anguissa alternative. But just based on everything we've done, and I should mention, like I talked about the Opta kind of predictor standings, if you will. The sports books have Napoli still as the favorite. Do you think that's right?
Yes, knocking on all the wood and throwing all the salt and touching all the corne. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's going to be obviously a different challenge than last year, playing in multiple competitions. And I think the club and Conte really want to have a good showing in the Champions League. I think it's something that he kind of bothers him as a coach. Yep. That's the one thing that's kind of missing on his resume. Not just winning it, but it doesn't have a lot of just success in general in the competition. So I think he wants to do well. So there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment there. But the depth in the squad is obviously there. De Laurentiis has spent the money like he said he would. If things go the way we think they're going to go with signing a couple more players, we're pretty much going to be too deep at every spot with not just random guys, it's the quality starters and backups all over the roster. So, yeah, I think if we had to, realistically putting our fandom aside, say who's the favorite, I think it would be us, followed by Inter. I think Inter is still a little bit ahead of Milan as far as roster goes, but I think Milan could be a little bit like we were last year, having only just the one, playing in Serie A, being able to focus on once a week. I think they're going to be able to really make some noise. I don't know if they'll push for the title, but I think if they finish second or third, it wouldn't be anything too crazy.
No, agreed. And I think that's right about where they're kind of ranked in terms of the sports books.
Right.
Just quickly before we move on to Inter, with Napoli, in a way, this Lukaku injury might kind of damper expectations, which I actually think is a good thing for us. I think we're better not being the favorites. I am a little bit. I know this is the most optimistic I've seen our fan base probably ever.
It's hard not to be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, we've upgraded at a lot of positions. We have probably the best coach, certainly in Italy, one of the best in the world. He's, I mean, nominated for a Ballon d'Or. He's not going to win it, but you know,
at least he could win it. But
100%. Conte's probably fifth on that list, if I'm being honest. But still, top 5 in the world is pretty damn good. The one concern I have, and Conte alluded to this as well in his press conference, is that, like, I really liked how he put it, which was that this is still a club that's in rebuild mode. Yes, we won the Scudetto, but he considers that to be just like an extraordinary feat that the players and the staff pulled off. But, you know, he was very clear that this was not like the final achievement at the end of a journey, is I think the words he used.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, he said, like, we just started the journey, and this is, we're taking the second step, and then there will be a third step. And his ultimate goal and his cycle at Napoli is to leave the club in a position where they can compete regularly with the big teams. And so, and he also was, I mean, this is very Conte, by the way. It's like kind of like setting himself up for excuses later in case things don't go well. But, you know, he is right to say that it's not typical for a club that wins the league to have like 13 departures or 13 arrivals and 11 departure, whatever it was. So it's still very much a rebuild. And yes, while a lot of these players are depth players, they are going to have to play in different competitions, because we can't play guys like De Bruyne or Lobotka twice a week, every like 90 minutes every week. So that gives me a little bit cause for concern that there's so many new guys. They also have to learn the system. But at the end of the day, I think Serie A is still going to be top priority. I think Champions League will also be, you know, maybe call it a 1A or 1B, but I think the league phase of the Champions League is no longer as difficult as the group stage used to be in the previous format. But I do think Napoli should still be considered favorites, even with the Lukaku injury. That's partly because of Inter and what we've seen there. So let's talk a little bit about them. I think the biggest factor, and most people will say this, I mean, you don't need to be an expert to make this point, is that they lost Inzaghi to Al Hilal, and their new coach, Christian Chivu, who actually is a good coach. He did really well with Inter's Primavera. He did well with Parma. But nonetheless, he only has like 13 games of experience in the top flight as a coach. So that seems to be like the biggest unknown or uncertainty with Inter.
Yeah, I mean, look, and Conte said this too at his press conference, and we all know this, us that follow Serie A religiously and have for a long time. The three teams, in the north, Inter, Milan, and Juventus are always going to be there, right? They spend the most money, they have the biggest history, they have the biggest budgets, so on and so forth. So when a coach, goes to a team like Inter, that inherently comes with a lot of pressure. I know Chivu played at Inter, so I there's something to be said about that. I'm sure he understands some of that pressure, but I think it's obviously different as a player and a coach. But when you're a player, you just go on the field and you play. You do what you're told. When you're a manager of a team like that, it comes with a lot of responsibilities. And look, if he gets off, out of the gate and they lose 2 or 3 games in a row, that's going to be hard to justify to a fan base where they lost out on a lot of coaches. He was not their first choice by any stretch. That's kind of who they just ended up with, if you want to put it that way. And they haven't brought in any sort of, great player. Like you said, Bonnie probably their best signing. If I had to give my opinion on that, and Inzaghi, say what you will. I'm not his biggest fan as a manager as far as playing style, but he had set up something there that was, he was there 4 years, right? I think. So he had a specific style that the team knew how to play. So losing somebody like that for a coach, like you mentioned, that's basically a rookie, head coach for in Serie A, especially with a team like this. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting, and I think Lautaro will probably have a better year than he had last year. He wasn't great, especially at the beginning of the year, so I think that'll make a difference for them positively. He's obviously a really good player, but we'll see. They're not. I mean, I don't think they've done anything to say, "Oh my God, they're gonna be great." Like, we'll see.
Yeah, I really like Sucic. I think he'll be great. Yeah. I threw Pio Esposito on there as he's not really a transfer because he's owned by Inter, but he returned on loan and he's looked really good. So he can be a nice little, call it, addition on the team. But, Lookman was going to be the marquee signing. And as I mentioned earlier, that doesn't seem like it was going to happen. I was getting all excited to just accuse them of cheating because they, they were like the way this
Atalanta 16 whatever it was.
Well, and that's why I put Zalewski on both sides because it was a loan with obligation to buy, so they paid $6 million to buy him from Roma, and somehow they sold him to the club that is trying to sell Lookman for 17 million euros, and he had like one goal and one assist all year. So it's like, how did his value go up 11 million euros? This just seemed like the classic Plus Valenza special. And it seemed like Inter were willing to pay 43 for Lookman and Atalanta wanted 55. And magically Zalewski's worth 17. So I was a little bit surprised, and I'm still a little bit skeptical that maybe some of these reports are just to like throw people off a little bit, and then we'll get a report like right before the window closes that they've managed to work it out and Lookman's going to go to Atalanta. Hopefully a Premier League club kind of swoops in and grabs him.
He's not even with the team, right? He's somewhere else training on his own, Lookman?
Yeah, I thought he did return to Zingonia today, but it wasn't to train. I think it was to have like a discussion with the club. He was training on his own in London for a while.
Oh, okay.
And then apparently I saw a report that said that he's not going to rejoin the team for another couple of weeks. So I don't know if that's because they're still trying to find a destination for him. So that's a pretty big one. There's other guys there. I mean, I think like you see the net spend there. I think the financials are really catching up with these guys, and they really can't make any more purchases unless they sell guys. So like there's rumors of Pavard being sold or Asllani, even Zielinski I heard is potentially on the market. So Inter still have quality players, Bastoni, Barella, Thuram, all these guys, but there's not a whole lot to get excited about, in my opinion. So I think they are rightfully second favorites. A team that I think, I don't know, I went in order of the sports books, and I'm not sure why Juve are considered the third favorite. We'll get to Milan in a second because that's who I think is better. But what's not shown, what's interesting about Juve and what's not shown here is that a lot of that net spend, why it's so negative, is because this is the year that a lot of their purchases from last year hit the books. So they have 105 million euros of being spent on players that are already Juve players. Conceição, 32 million. Nico Gonzalez, 28 million. Lloyd Kelly, 17 million. Pierre Kalulu, 14 million. And Di Gregorio, 14 million. So I didn't show them on the screen because these were guys that were already with the club. It was just loans with obligations. They brought in Joao Mario. Jonathan David is an interesting player.
Yeah, interesting.
As a Canadian, I know him more from his play with the national team. I've never been... I think he's a really good player, but I think he can be hit or miss. I don't know. We'll see. They're still very much linked to Randall Colomani, who seems to still want to play for them, but he's currently still a PSG player. They've sold a couple of players or loaned in the case of Weah. And then I have David Luiz. He's likely to be sold. I think they're just finalizing the deal with Nottingham Forest. So that'll be a good cash injection for them. And then I've highlighted a couple of guys there. Like if they sell Nico Gonzalez, then they're probably going to go after Jagrova. Once that David Luiz sale is completed, then they'll go for Matt O'Reilly at Brighton, who
Couple
has a
players we
couple.
were linked with, right? Both of them.
Sorry.
We were linked with both of those guys at some point, right?
Yeah. They're probably just looking up our transfer rumors on calciomercato.it.
They're following Danny in our group chat.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the ever lingering Dusan Blahovic saga, which is
such a strange
wild
situation, man. He was so good, so good.
Yeah, he just didn't work at Juve. He was great at Fiorentina, and as you mentioned earlier, one of the guys that we're now linked to. I personally, I mean, I just think with his salary, I don't see him giving up any salary. So unless Juve agrees to pay like a portion of it, I certainly don't see him going to Napoli. But he could go to Milan, who have been after him for a while.
Fascinating. Some of these guys that just go to these bigger teams and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, crazy. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Do you have any expectations for Juve? Like
they're a weird team, man. Look, obviously as Napoli fans, they are our biggest rival, our most hated team. But if we're looking at it objectively, it's a weird roster. I feel like it's an incomplete roster. Like I said, obviously they brought in David. He's gonna probably start a striker, but I don't know who's in their midfield that's really a world beater. Locatelli, does he still do it for you? I mean, he
was a lot better last season.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not somebody who's gonna take the reins. You know what I mean? He's not. I feel like the vintage Juventus teams always had, never mind 1, 2 or 3, sometimes 4 players that were world class that could take over a game and just change the game. Right? How many times we saw it 0-0 all of a sudden 89th minute and Nedved puts one in. Example.
And it was probably Conte coaching those.
Right, you see what I'm saying? It was just they were never out of a game. They were you always knew they were going to find a way to win, especially at home. Forget it. I feel like a lot of that luster, that fear that teams had going into playing, at Juventus or playing them in general is gone. Does anyone? Do you worry as a Napoli fan going to play Juventus? I'm very comfortable going to play Juventus. Just to give you, just as an example, and I feel like a lot of fan bases probably feel the same way.
I think a player who might feel like a new signing is Bremer.
Coming back from injury. Yeah,
if you look at their defensive record before he got hurt compared to after, they fell off a cliff after he got hurt.
But his partner is Gatti. Do you like Gatti? I don't like Gatti as a player. He's I don't know.
And Lloyd Kelly.
Yeah, it's just not a again, as much as we hate them and we want to revel in their misery, I love it, right?
Yeah.
But you got to respect I feel like there has to be a little bit of respect to what they've accomplished. Obviously, they cheated and the whole thing. We don't have to go through all that, but they've been the giants of Serie A for a very long time, and that just isn't the case anymore for different reasons. They just, starting with the roster, even the coach, they couldn't really find anybody.
Tudor.
They ended up keeping Tudor. It's not. I don't know. Doesn't do it.
Yeah, he's the classic caretaker coach, and now he's going to be there. I get it. He's a Juve guy. He understands the Juve way, but you're right. You put it perfectly. There's not a whole lot to fear with Juve.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know. A lot of your followers watch baseball, but with the Yankees in the late '90s, 2000s, nobody wanted to play the Yankees, right? Especially go Yankees in the playoffs. You just knew they're gonna find a way to win. Nobody cares about coming to Yankee Stadium and beating us anymore. It's just not a thing. Yeah, kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, and everybody hates the Yankees too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm a Yankee fan, so I respect that. Yeah, everybody hates the Yankees, so I think it's a very fair comparison.
A team that I think is a bit of a sleeper pick. I don't expect them to win the league, but I think they'll do a lot better than a lot of other people think they might do. Is Milan? I mean, I think I got to tip my hat to Ilitare. He was a sporting director that we were once linked to, and I was very happy. He was at Lazio forever, and I was very happy we didn't bring him in because I wasn't very fond of him. But you look at the sales. I mean, obviously Reinders, that might be a discount. He's already off to a great start in his first game with Real Madrid, but 55 million euros is a pretty significant chunk of cash. Tioff for 35 million. I don't know how they pulled that off.
Crazy. Well, EPL picks.
I guess so, yeah. Teo for 25 million. Even Okafor is supposed to be sold for around. I think
20,
the
right?
current
20.
offer is like 17, and they're holding out to
insane.
get 20. It's so we'll see how that goes. And then because they've made so much money on sales, they've been able to buy a whole bunch of players. Jashari, he's supposed to be really good. I'll be honest, I don't know much about him. I don't watch.
There's a lot of hype, man. There's a lot of hype. I'm talking to some of my friends back
Yeah.
in Napoli. People think he's really good. So we'll
There
see.
you go. I mean, they've really beefed up the midfield. They've added Ricci. I think, again, another player we were talking about offline is Luka Modric. And in a league like Serie, despite his age, I think he still can be a good player for them. Estupinan, Atakame, all these guys. And then Allegri at coach, I think, is the right guy to... I know Allegri didn't do well in his second stint at Juve, but I feel like he is the kind of the right guy after a 10th place finish to kind of steady the ship and get them back on track, especially playing only once a week.
Yeah, like we talked about before we started, I think, and even during the pod, just a few minutes ago, I think them playing once a week is going to remind us of a lot of what we did last year as far as being able to maybe win some games that we weren't expected to win, get some performances out of players that maybe you were like, all right, like you said, Modric tries 40. But yeah, you play him on a Sunday once a week, 75 minutes, he's class. He's gonna do what he needs to do, right? And you talk about bringing players in. I think, bringing De Winter in, he's a really good player. Like I've always liked him. Ricci, obviously a young up and coming midfielder. They've made a lot of good moves, and to your point, Allegri, again, he doesn't play a style that I love, very defensive, result-oriented coach. He's never been somebody to play, beautiful soccer in any way, shape, or form, defend and then counter. But he's been in Milan before. He understands what it takes to win there, understands the fan base and the demands that comes with it, just like, we talked about with Inter. I think, he's the right guy there. I would not have been happy if Conte had left and we were to have brought in Allegri. I don't think he's the kind of coach to coach Napoli for many reasons, but just personality-wise with our city, I don't think it would have went well, just as starters. But I think he'll do well. Again, playing once a week, he'll be able to focus, really scheme and game plan. My prediction for them is second or third, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only reason I was open to the idea of Allegri was because he followed Conte at Juve and won like 6 more titles. So, he's obviously not the same coach that he was back then. But once you have Conte, you're a lot more open to like pragmatic football. But yeah, I've been really impressed with Milan. We're almost out of time, and I didn't make graphics for any other clubs, anyways. But I touched on it earlier. Atalanta have been, a kind of serial threat to the top 4, sometimes finishing in the top 4, but that was all under Gasperini, and I think they significantly downgraded at coach with Ivan Juric. I know he's like a disciple of Gasperini, but a very different type of coach. Do you agree with that? Do you think Atalanta are going to have a bit of a drop-off here?
Yeah, look, I think if you look back at the Gasperini era at Atalanta, as much as, again, I don't like the guy at all, just personally, but you can't take away from his results, right? He took a club that was, a mid-table team, most of their Serie A existence, sometimes up and down, and made them perennial, contenders for top 4, definitely European spots, year in and year out. And, going back to what I said before about Juventus, like going to play at Atalanta is tough, man. It was hard. That's one you circling on calendar. Like, well, you hope we get a draw here, kind of, right? Always hard to play. Juric, man, like, I don't know. He's always been a guy that I feel like teams brought in middle of the season, try to save them from relegation. I don't know. It's just like some of these signings, I don't understand. Like, you go from a fan base, you're a fan of this team, and again, whatever. I don't like Atalanta, but if I put myself in their shoes, you coming off 5-6 amazing years, you just won the Europa League, right? 2 years ago, was it? All of a sudden, this guy goes to Roma and you bring in Juric. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? Like, I don't know. How do you get excited about that? I mean, like, we could all be wrong, but if we look at it from from jump. I just don't know how they repeat what they've done in the past.
Yeah, and then
I think Fiorentina takes their spot, by the way, as far as like the best
okay.
team that's like not expecting to.
Yeah, or maybe even Bologna, one of those guys.
Bologna, but yeah, I think Fiorentina brought a lot of guys back. I like the coach.
Yep.
Moise Kean is a good player. Maybe we could bring him in.
Yeah. Since we're linked to everybody, might as well add him to the list. We'll just wrap up with Roma because Gasperini went there, and I think he can have success there. He's the type of coach that is very demanding in terms of players, but at the same time, I feel like that has to be a long-term project. Atalanta weren't good right away with Gasperini. It took time to slowly build up to that point, and it looks like the Friedkins are giving him. They're willing to spend and give him players. I just feel like that's going to take time.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you're looking at a couple of years, 2-3 years before you start seeing the results that he had at Atalanta. Again, a very demanding piazza, as we say, right? A place where Roma fans, they want to win. They don't. They just want to win. Very loud, very, very in your face fan base.
And almost like expectations kind of
are always like out of whack,
higher than they should be for given their track record.
Well, I think it just kind of comes with like being Romano, right? I think they're just like we're here, we're the capital, we expect to win, we're better than everybody, and it's just kind of like their attitude in general. So I think that
it reflects with
the team. Yeah, I think which makes sense. But we'll see. We'll see if they give him the time that they say they're going to give him. They have a nice roster. I don't think anything crazy, but I've always been a fan of Dybala. If he can stay healthy, obviously he makes a difference. We'll see. But Gasperini is an interesting character, man. Very interesting character.
Yeah. Just before we wrap it up, we opened the season with Sassuolo. I mean, we talked about who we think will play. Like we know the Lukaku situation. It's the one thing that's a little tricky about this fixture is that it's an away match against a team that just got promoted back to Serie A. So it's going to be there's going to be a lot of energy at the Mappe. What are your expectations quickly for this match?
Well, it's funny you mention that because that is a fear of mine playing Serie B. Well, newly promoted teams early on in the season, especially the first game, is always a little tricky because there is a lot of expectation and energy and fire from the fans, and that obviously transmits to the players. Mm-hmm. They're not. I don't think they're a very good team. They have a few interesting players, but nothing. I like Bolpani to give you an example. I think he's a nice player, but I think it's a kind of a game that you got to score early and settle things down. We typically travel really well to the Mappe as far as a fan base, so I expect pretty good Napoli contingent in the corner there, or the one curva, if you want to call it there, that usually takes over. If we score early, Joe, I'm going to be very optimistic and say 0-3, maybe a couple of De Bruyne off the bat here, but that's just me being super. I'm just very optimistic going this year, and you know me, Joe, I'm not that guy.
Something's happened to us. Even
I don't know. So
Rafa, I was listening to the rant, and Rafa was like, "I'm done with the superstitions."
I'm not even superstitious. I'm always like cautious to because you don't want to get your hopes up and then things don't go as you expect. But I just don't see how, all things being equal, look, anything can happen in sports, right? And we've watched this game long enough that we know anything can happen. We won a Scudetto and then we finished 10th, so we understand how that works. But again, all things being equal, if we score early, first 10, 15 minutes, I think we cruise, nice, 0-3, 1-3, something like that.
I think to your point about the fans, I think they've sold like 6,000 tickets to.
Yeah, I mean, we always. Yeah.
So we'll be pretty vocal. They do still. I mean, Berardi looked good in the Coppa Italia. He put some gorgeous passes.
They had what's his name too that we were linked to a couple times. Oh my God, is it not Traore? Is it? The other winger.
No, Lauriente probably.
Lauriente, grazie.
Yeah, he's still there, and I can't remember who scored the goal in the Coppa Italia. I think it was. I can't remember, but it was a good goal. But yeah, I mean, it's a match you would expect to win. Who knows? I think the one thing I'm happy about with Conte being in charge is I don't expect another, record-breaking fall off after Scudetto. I think
and also I think he'll use last year's first game that we got kind of run off the pitch as kind of like, hey, remember what happened last year? We walked in and we got slapped around pretty good, so let's not let that happen again.
Yeah, and also I think this is the perfect situation to let's start the season with the 4-3-3 because these guys know it inside out.
Yeah,
maybe not experiment too much just yet. Again, with Luka playing as striker, it lends itself to a 4-3-3 anyways.
And you also have McTominay coming off the injury, like he was knocked up a little.
Yeah, so maybe he's the midfielder that rests for this one, doesn't play right away from the start.
You know what? We haven't really talked about. I'm sorry, John.
That's okay.
I apologize. We didn't talk about him at all. I think Billy Gilmore will play a much bigger role this season than he did last year. Again, obviously playing the two competitions, I think he'll play a lot in Serie A.
Yeah, I agree.
I think when he filled in, he was really good.
I think like McTominay, they may ease him in because he also missed a bunch of time during the preseason. But I agree with you. I think Lobotka is getting older. I don't think he can handle the workload. We've seen him miss time with injuries as well. We know Gilmore can play that role because when he covered for Lobotka, he was just fine. Slightly different style of play. He's a bit more direct. Lobo is very much the short pass guy. But I completely agree. He's a guy that maybe isn't talked about enough because there's been so much activity on the market that we're looking all over the place with all these signings, whereas we've got a solid player there waiting for his time.
I think. Do you think Buongiorno starts? I don't think he starts.
I don't think so. I agree with the guys on the rant on this one as well. I think Juan Jesus is they disagreed. It was Juan Jesus or Bokama, I think.
Yeah.
I personally think Juan Jesus will play. He started against Olympiacos in the friendly with Rekmani.
This guy
somehow, man,
he will play forever. Next 5 years, as soon as somebody gets hurt, Juan Jesus. Doesn't matter who we bring in.
Yeah, exactly. But to your point, going back to McTominay,
okay, Ma's new. He needs time to settle in. Let's just play Juan Jesus. Sassuolo.
Exactly. Unless he has like a nightmare game, then maybe we mix it up.
I'm sure he'll be fine.
Buongiorno is pretty much ready, so I think maybe he doesn't start these. Because another thing, just to remind everyone, most people know already, but
love it.
We have
I know you're gonna say already. Go ahead.
Classic Serie A scheduling where we play 2 games, and then there's an international break. So I mean, I guess it's good for the injured guys because it gives them.
Every time you're just getting excited and the season just starts, juices are flowing all of a sudden. Never mind.
And we know how much you love those international breaks.
So stupid. Sorry, I won't go on attention.
All right, I think that's actually the perfect place to wrap it up. So, before I let you go, Gaetano, if anything happening with Tri-State, are you guys doing a meet for the first game of the season?
Yeah, so we're gonna have our first meet, our viewing party this Saturday coming up at Pizzatiello. As always, our friend Chef Nitz will host us, and 12:30 game. So we'll get there around 12. Great food, even better people and atmosphere. We'd love to see you guys. We have our memberships up for sale. $30 gets you a year-long membership. You get a hat. Which is really nice, by the way.
I saw the hat.
Should have worn the hat. I made a mistake here. Maybe next time.
I'll have to figure out how to
Photoshop. Yeah, just Photoshop me on there. Yeah.
Send me a picture and I'll cut to it. Yeah.
What else? You get a card. You get 10% off at Pizzatiello anytime you go there, regardless if it's a game.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, which is, by the way, out of all the things you get, that's the best thing. And
that'll more than
that alone
would cover the membership.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, look, guys, I'm not saying this because he's our friend and we go it's a top-notch place to eat. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Yeah. And now he makes his own mozzarella too.
This guy just I think he's at the point he's just teasing us, just to mess with us. I don't even think he wants to do any of this stuff. He just messes with us. What else? I think that's it. You got I would think a couple stickers, stuff like that. And then there's we're trying to put together a couple of exclusive events throughout the year, only for members. So
awesome
for that. But yeah,
great.
Thanks.
So, no problem. So you can find the club at _Napoli Club on X.
Yes.
You can find Gaetano at Salazzo _1310 or 1310. You can find me at Joe _Fischetti 5, and you can find the podcast at Forza Napoli Pod. Also, for any Napoli fans that are in Vancouver, I had a fan reach out to me and I threw something on X, and just like that, a Napoli Club Vancouver form. So if you're looking to watch matches with other Napoli fans in Vancouver, reach out to me or look up that Napoli Club Vancouver account on X, and I'm sure they can get you sorted and get contact details. Gaetano will tell you, it usually starts out pretty small, 5-6 guys, and next thing you know, you got 40-50 guys going to a meet.
One of the coolest things, and I know we're running out of time, Joe, I apologize.
That's
but
okay.
One of the coolest things about having started this, well, two things. One was I had no idea how many Napoli fans there were even in the area. When we started, it was just a few of us. Like I always told the story, right? A few of us on the couch, and we said, you know what, we're gonna just start a club, and here we are. We've had a really good run. It's been a lot of fun, and we've grown exponentially. Just been great to just meet up with everybody. But the second coolest thing has been seeing like how many Napoli clubs there are around the country. Like I had no idea, and they just keep popping up. I know, Debo out on the West Coast is doing this thing out there. There's a bunch down in Florida. Now you're telling me Vancouver. They're just obviously up here, in the tri-state area. There's a bunch. Shout out to our New Jersey friends, Tifos in New Jersey. Yeah, man, it's just great. It's a great community. We just love hanging out and watching games with our friends and enjoying Napoli. That's really about it.
And also, to your point, shout out to Raf and Biz for starting the Napoli Club North America, which is kind of like uniting all of these different fan clubs in different parts of North America together. So that's also a great way sort of to grow the community and have a collective amongst clubs. And if you're looking to start a club, reach out to those guys. I think they have a website as well, and they can fill you in on what you need to do to get a club going.
And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Napoli Club Toronto, our sister club.
My peeps.
Your peeps. They were instrumental in us starting because Carm had done it, and we really leaned on him a lot. So myself and Pete, who's the vice president, as you well know, give them a lot of credit always, because without them, I don't think we'd be where we are. So really appreciate it. And look, if anybody is looking to start a club or has started one and just has some questions or whatever, reach out. I'll be happy to talk.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? Like you pay it forward. They help you guys, you help other guys, and it's all in support of the same club that we all love.
Yep.
Okay, let's wrap it up there. I will be back next week with a review of that Sassuolo match. Hopefully it's a victory. But until next time, I'm Joe Fischetti. Forza Napoli sempre.